With Kokomi's Rerun banner arriving, I thought I'd make a video a bit more focused on her teams rather than a more general guide. So today, we're going to be giving a brief overview of Kokomi to understand why she's an S tier character before breaking down every viable Kokomi team. Kokomi's main role in teams is to provide Hydra application and healing, having the freedom to be used either on or off the field. She especially succeeds in healing and is debatably the best healer in the entire game. Most of her gameplay is consolidated in her elemental skill as it provides both healing and consistent Hydra application that lasts for a whopping 12 seconds. While it does have a 20-second cooldown, she can effectively negate this by taking advantage of her Ascension 1 passive, which refreshes its duration after she casts her elemental burst. Her burst state empowers her damage from normal attacks, elemental skill, and resistance to interruption, alongside providing team-wide healing when hitting enemies. This ability especially amplifies her presence if she is used as an on-fielder. However, it is also fine to primarily use her off-field for only the heals and application. For players who want to use her elemental burst for every rotation, she unfortunately has a 70 cost burst, and regardless of playstyle, will at least need 170 ER to consistently have it recharged. Thankfully, this is only in the context of her being solo Hydra with Favonius procs on other teammates. If there are other Hydra units in your team, which is often seen in teams like Mono Hydra or Bloom-based teams, then these requirements drop significantly. After the release of version 3.0, Kokomi, like many Hydra characters, benefited from the new reactions and changes made to things like the Hydra Resonance. Dendro teams gave her more flexibility, and because Bloom-based teams like Bloom and Burgeon have players take lots of self-inflicted damage, Kokomi's ability to provide both healing and sufficient Hydra application increased her value in such teams. While Kokomi provides a lot, she does have a few things that makes her not as high as a priority for certain players. One of the main things is that her elemental skill is stationary, which can be somewhat annoying if you're against heavy enemies who move around a lot and or don't have a grouper to keep enemies within its AoE. Another thing is that she's not necessarily a unit you get if you want a certain team to dish out more damage up front. This is especially the case for players who vertically invest in teams that don't involve Kokomi in them. And for context, vertical investment is just essentially when you invest in very few teams, but you invest very heavily into said teams. What she lacks in upfront damage, she makes up for with her incredible survivability. However, not everybody needs nor wants a strong healer like Kokomi, and is comfortable settling with characters like Bennett, Baizhu or Yao Yao, or even Diona for things like healing. And speaking of her amazing defensive utility, this also kind of leads to her suffering from what I like to refer to as the Zhongli syndrome. Her utility, especially in overworld content, puts the game essentially on easy mode. And while many will appreciate this ease of playability, there will of course be a select few who kind of find it boring for an already relatively easy game to become even easier simply because of a single character. Now that we've covered the base of what Kokomi can bring to the table, let's now get into some of her teams. The first we'll start with is one she is very commonly used in, which is Freeze. Kokomi's benefits work amazingly in this team as she provides enough AoE Hydra application through her elemental skill to help keep enemies frozen. As will be the case for the other teams that she can be played in, slotting her in these teams frees up space for more offensive units in your Freeze team. A common Freeze team you may see is Ayaka, Shanhe, Kokomi, and Kazuha. Despite requiring a team full of 5-star units, having a team like this allows players to clear most Abyss cycles with ease. Putting Kokomi on a set like Tenacity with Thrilling Tales will help Ayaka dish out more damage alongside the buff she gets from Kazuha and Shanhe. Shanhe can of course be replaced with units like Kaya or Rosario who provide their own benefits as well, especially at higher constellations. Her spot in this team is only challenged really by Mona, who performs a similar role to Kokomi in this team. Mona's main point of competition versus Kokomi is her strong Omen debuff alongside the fact that she is also a Hydra Catalyst who can equip Thrilling Tales and use Tenacity. Despite having weaker application, her ability to increase Ayaka's damage output alone makes her valuable in her own right. However, Mona's damage increase isn't so large that it's any more valuable than Kokomi's longer uptime, consistency, and defensive utility. Next up is any Bloom-based team. Such teams require at least one Hydra unit to trigger Bloom, which is the basis for these reactions. In Nilo Bloom, Kokomi oftentimes will have more time on field, making her run a full EM build to maximize on Bloom Core's damage output. Running sets like Gilded Dreams, Flower of Paradise Lost, or Deepwood as a placeholder are the go-tos for such a team. Notably, pairing with a Dendro healer like Yao Yao or Baizhu makes her EM build a bit more comfortable to run. In teams like Hyperbloom or Burgeon where more of her focus is on application, she can opt to go for her more general HP build with a set like Ocean Hued Clan. Especially in Hyperbloom, because she has slower Hydra application compared to other frequently used Hyperbloom Hydra units like Zincho or Yulan, she's able to trigger Bloom while not completely draining the Dendro aura. This allows for what is called Quick Bloom, since Quicken aura can be consistently triggered and maintained. Quick Bloom teams typically feature teams with Sino or Alhaitham who benefit from this feature. An example of a Quick Bloom team could be something like Sino, Nahida, Kokomi, and Fischl. While she is not frequently used in Burgeon teams, she still slots in comfortably in such teams. As Toma's shield will not always be enough to protect against the explosive Dendro cores, Kokomi's healing alleviates this downside. However, if you have a unit like Zincho in this team, which you usually will use Zincho in such teams, his own personal defensive utility and minor healing will usually be enough in most scenarios, making her not as necessary to be used in. The next team is Sukokomon, a team that garnered lots of popularity during its first appearance. It consists of Kokomi, Sucrose, Xiangling, and Official, having no replacements or flex slots unlike other teams. The entire concept of this team is using characters with creature-like off-field abilities, or rather, sort of like a Pokemon team. Sukokomon shines in AoE situations where all the characters can dish out respectable damage to multiple enemies. While this team is a solid choice for biz cycles with heavy AoE content, one of the main issues with it is its requirement for understanding when to use each character's ability. Alongside knowing other concepts such as global swirls, such complexities can increase players' disinterest in this team. Nonetheless, once you get the hang of it, I'd say it's a pretty fun team to experiment with. Next in line is Taser. This team is more focused on the electro charge reaction, which is made when Hydro and Electro interact. The primary archetype for this team include Kokomi, an Electro unit, an Animo unit, and a flex slot, which is oftentimes taken up by a second Electro unit. Kokomi's primary purpose in this team is to be an on-field driver for off-field electro abilities like Yamiko and Official's skill or Beta. Her application also allows for Animo units to take advantage of swirling electrocharged, in which case both Hydro and Electro are swirled. Because of her defensive utility, offensive options like Zincho or Beta can be comfortably used in this composition. With Kokomi on field, she can do a respectable amount of personal damage from her elemental burst buffs and Ocean Hued Clam's passive effect. The last team we'll talk about is Mono Hydro. It's straightforward in terms of the team composition, involving Kokomi with 2 other Hydro units and an Animo unit to swirl Hydro. Kokomi's main function here is for defensive utility to allow more offensive options in the remaining slots. Alright, and that brings this Kokomi team video to a close. If you guys did enjoy it, then be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more Genshin Impact content. And until the next video, which will be on Farzan, bye bye.